All right. On this FCHS career exploration project, we have with us Deric Roberts, and Deric is the finance director at St. Vincent's Hospital. Deric, Deric Roberts, does anyone call you D-Rob?
Yeah, only my closest friends and family are allowed to refer to me as D-Rob. So,
for the purpose of this interview, could I potentially refer to you as D-Rob?
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, D-Rob. So first of all, thank you for joining us. The finance director at St. Vincent. I am sure that has a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on. So why don't you tell us kind of about your position and then maybe some of the roles that you've had up until this point that have helped get you that job?
Sure. So my role at St. Vincent Hospital of Indianapolis is to kind of provide guidance around our kind of financial outlook. So what does that mean? It means getting involved with budgeting, forecasting. When we refer to budgets, it's how much business do we think that we're going to do? How many patients do we think that we're going to serve over the coming 12 months, 18 months? How much revenue that will produce? How much expenses like labor and supplies do we anticipate? And kind of what do we think is going to be left at the end of the day that we can then kind of reinvest into the hospital in the form of new technology and equipment, and bringing on additional service lines. So kind of working hand in hand with our clinical operators, those nurses and physicians that are providing the patient care, kind of at the bedside to help them understand kind of that relationship between kind of the revenue and the expense, and making sure that we stay tenable as a business.
Yeah. What about leading up to this? What are some of the other roles that have kind of been you've used as a leapfrog to get to this, or stepping stone, I guess?
Sure. So I've been with Ascension St. Vincent for actually today is my 3-year anniversary. I just realized. So
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. 3 years with St. Vincent. Prior to that, I was a finance manager for Steak and Shake, which, if you don't know, is headquartered downtown Indianapolis, right next to the field house. I was there for approximately 6.5, 7 years as a finance manager, and kind of transitioned into that role while I was getting my MBA with a focus in finance concentration at Butler University. I will say prior to that, I didn't have a ton of finance experience per se. I did go to Franklin College and got my undergraduate degree with a concentration in marketing originally, but through the various roles that I've had in my career year to date or to date, just kind of gravitated towards those numbers and spreadsheet type exercises that are prevalent with the finance role. So it wasn't something that I initially set out to do, obviously, with the marketing concentration with my undergrad, but through trials and tribulations of working a job and developing a career, kind of ended up in this path.
Right. Now, you mentioned Steak and Shake. I heard a rumor. One of my good friends also worked in, coincidentally, the finance department, I believe, at Steak and Shake, and he mentioned that when you worked at Steak and Shake, you would also have to go in the restaurant and work a couple shifts. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So my first 2 or 3 days on the job at Steak and Shake, they wanted you to get kind of the hands-on experience and understand the operations, which is true of any, I think, finance job. Is you have to understand the operations in order to know what the numbers on the spreadsheet represent, right? So the first 3 days at Steak and Shake, I spent in the restaurant, smashing burgers, running fries, taking orders in the drive-through, and I will say that, like, I'm happy to be behind my computer at my desk, it's tough work, and it's somebody's got to do it. But I'm glad that it's not me full time.
Did you get yelled at customers or anything?
You know what? I never got yelled at, but you could definitely. I got probably side-eyed a couple of times, and they knew that it wasn't my day job, if you know what I mean. Right?
I got you. No extra cheese on their fries for some people, though, if they got a little attitude with you.
Right. Yeah.
You got to be good about that. So, what kind of drew you into the finance world, the business world? What kind of, was that something you've always wanted to do, or?
Yeah, I think I always knew that I wanted to be kind of in kind of the like that corporate business type role. I just wasn't sure which hat I wanted to wear, whether that be marketing or accounting or finance. You know, there are plenty of avenues to pursue when you go into kind of a business type job. I just knew growing up in a small town in rural Indiana where farming was kind of one of the main options for a career. I didn't want to be a farmer. And in order to find a decent job, I was probably going to need to go somewhere where there were more kind of corporate business type opportunities. And so, when I went to school, I focused on business without necessarily knowing which avenue I wanted to pursue. So I took a kind of a range of courses, and at the time, marketing seemed more interesting to me than just working with numbers and spreadsheets. But again, like through the career experience, I just realized that I had a knack for working in modeling financials, working in spreadsheets, have a mind for numbers. Not to say that I was excelled at math throughout my school career, but they just make sense to me. Like, when you can have a 1 + 1 = 2 every time, it always makes me feel good that there's an actual right answer at the end of the day.
Yeah. So then kind of talking about the role that you have, I mean, I think I could not do, I'm not like precise with the math and things like that. So what type of personality would be good for this? And like what type of personality would maybe struggle with a role like yours, like in finance or anything like that?
Yeah. So I think from like interpersonal skills standpoint, like you've got to be dependable. People are, and that's true of almost any role, but there are people that are counting on you to, provide, whether it's a report or whether it's a input or guidance or an opinion on something. At the end of the day, there's a timeline, and any time that you're past the deadline on that, it sets everyone else back as well. So you got to be dependable. I think you also have to be relatable to some extent. Within accounting, I think you're very much like into the numbers and making these journal entries and recording the financial transactions of the business. But with finance, you're working with people from marketing, people from operations, people from HR, who may not necessarily have that finance background. So you've got to be able to translate, well, these are what the numbers are, but this is what it means, and this is how it impacts you. And so you have to have the type of personality that is going to be able to communicate that effectively without coming across as just, this boring dude who's going to tell me that my numbers are bad. I think you also, especially in this day and age, you can tell I'm working from home. You have to be a little disciplined. It's like the type of got a supervisor over your shoulder every 15 minutes checking in to see how you're performing, how you're doing. You've got to be able to kind of focus in and tune things out and get the job done, regardless of your circumstances or your setting. As far as like, the more technical skills, I don't think that, again, you don't have to be a math whiz, but I think you do have to have a mind for numbers,
Right.
and a mind for kind of the bigger picture. Especially as you advance your career, if we take on this project, we might not be able to do projects. If we take on project X, we might not be able to do Y and Z.
Right.
And so, you have to know which, even if you've got the budget for it or the time for it or the people for it, you have to be able to have an opinion and a recommendation as to which one's going to be better for the greater good of the company long term, as opposed to, maybe this is just the easiest project that we can get done right now, but maybe there's an alternative project out there that we can do to set us up for a longer term.
Right. So it's like you also have to think big picture in your role.
Yeah, I think, again, as you kind of progress your career, I think that kind of comes along with the territory. Not necessarily like, if you can think big picture, right out of the gate, great, you're going to be excellent and succeed in your career. I certainly couldn't when I started. I think in most career settings, you develop a mind for it. You develop, those skills to think bigger picture. When you start out earlier, it's more task oriented. Like, I got to do this and this and this. And then, as you get older and wiser, you can see not only, yes, you're still maybe doing those tasks, but what those tasks mean for the business and who uses the output of those tasks and how they relate to the kind of big picture, grand scheme of what you're doing as an organization.
Right. Okay. So as far as your job now, what are some pros and some cons? Like, what are some things you like and what are some things you don't like about it?
Yeah. So, again, I feel like I have a mind for numbers. So I enjoy working with spreadsheets and doing financial models and, pro forma income statements, building business cases, trying to understand kind of the business aspect from a numbers standpoint. Like that kind of stuff is appealing to me. So from a personal standpoint, I enjoy doing that most of the time. And so that in and of itself is rewarding. But also you get, like I said before, I think you get to touch different aspects of the business. You're working with marketing to understand, what the strategy is from getting your name out there and advertising and trying to develop models around what kind of return you can get on the money that you put towards your advertising, how many people that's going to bring in and what that means for, the bottom line of the business. You get to work with operations and say, we could potentially do this more efficiently. And if we did it more efficiently, it would mean, this much savings at the end of the year, or, working with them to identify, hey, you have a need for more people. Let's put together a business case and get somebody hired and get lessen the burden on the people that you currently have working for you. You get to work with HR. You get to work with, the hospital leadership and organizational leaders to help them understand, get a clearer picture of what the health of the business is from at any given point in time. I think where it gets tough, though, is, sometimes you do have to tell people no. Some people, sometimes there'll be ideas for projects that, when you're putting forth a project, you're probably going to spend some money. You're going to invest in, at least on the healthcare side, you're going to invest in people. You're going to invest in equipment. You're going to invest people's time, right? And sometimes when you run the numbers, it doesn't look like a very good idea. And so, you have to communicate that and sometimes let people down that are very enthusiastic about their ideas and just say, it doesn't look like it's going to work out. It doesn't look like it'd be a great thing for the business, even though you're very passionate about it. So, giving people bad news is never fun. Also, unfortunately, sometimes finance gets involved with when there's economic downturns and companies have to make cuts, whether that's cuts to what we spend on, the marketing, or cuts to labor force and downsizing labor. And of course, that's never an easy or fun conversation either when you're talking about people's careers and livelihood. But at the end of the day, we're trying to work with the health of the business in mind, while also balancing kind of the well-being of our workforce too. So there are definitely days where they're difficult conversations, but by and large, I've been fortunate enough to have way more good than bad.
So, I mean, it's basically the pro and con is kind of the same. The pro, you're the director. The con, you're the director. Like, it's the buck starts and stops with you. So you get to work with people and help implement the programs, but you also, you have to say no. If program is cut, you're the one who does that. And so that's probably one of the parts that maybe even as like a 16, 17-year-old, we didn't realize. Like, director, you see top dog, that's it, and all the perks that came with it. You wouldn't necessarily also see the tough conversations you would have to have. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of the last one's a two-parter here. How would someone prepare for this, for a profession in this field? And then just, do you have any kind of general advice for high school students?
Sure. Yeah. So, when I was in school, I didn't, again, know that this was the career choice that I was going to pursue. If you're fortunate enough, I certainly knew people who did have that kind of tunnel vision in high school, even that, like, no, I'm going to be an engineer. So I'm going to graduate, I'm going to go to Rose-Hulman, and then I'm going to get a job as a, structural, civil engineer for the city of whatever. Like, that's fantastic. I have no idea what I'm doing tomorrow, was my mindset in high school. And even through college too. But if you do know that you want to pursue kind of a role in finance or accounting, or really any kind of aspect of kind of the business world, I would suggest, taking courses in math, courses in economics, any kind of business tools classes, working with Excel, Word, PowerPoint, any of kind of those technical applications that are used in the day-to-day of business. But yeah, the math, accounting, any type of those, any types of courses that are going to just start shaping the way that you think about kind of how business operates, and kind of how accounting, being kind of the language of business, is going to be helpful down the road. For those of you out there that are maybe more like me and just kind of had a general idea of what you wanted to do when you grew up, I would say take as many diverse classes as possible, especially, if you get out of once you get out of high school and enter college, if you still haven't kind of focused in on a certain path, go take that biology class, go take that art history class. I don't know, like whatever is going to like stimulate the different parts of your brain, and give you the most broad set of experiences possible, so that you can, with kind of energy and certainty, like declare, yes, this is what interests me at this time, and know that you're never like pigeonholed into it. Right. I was 30 years old before I made the shift out of kind of general business and project management to finance. Mm-hmm. And so you're never kind of too old to change the game. so to speak. But that I guess would be my advice for younger people out there.
All right. Once again, thank you so much, Deric Roberts, the finance director at St. Vincent's. D-Rob, as we've established that some people do call you, for joining us. I appreciate it so much. And I think you've kind of hit on something that a lot of other people hit on, where it's just important to be well-rounded. Like you had a role earlier that kind of helped you, that maybe necessarily wasn't similar to finance, but it helped you grow. And then even at Steak and Shake, just going and working in the restaurant, you got to see that, and you got to see like that part of what the business was. So just being well-rounded is something that we've really kind of seen as a recurring theme in our interviews so far. So we really appreciate you coming on, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, you too.